Hi, my name's Rob Hodgson from the Access Group. I'm joined today by Neil Burden from Haul Store. Hello, Neil.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi. Neil, if you could just start, please, by giving us a little bit of background on Haul Store, where you started and the sort of services you offer.
Yeah, of course. We're a 3PL. We're located in Surrey. We're an independent company, so I'm a co-owner. We're owned by two families, and we founded the company around 4 years ago, and we specialise in e-commerce fulfilment.
Very good, very good. So I imagine with the events of the last 6 or 7 months or so, it must have been a very quiet time for you. I'd say in jest, yeah. So in terms of the obviously what we've come on the call today to have a quick chat through is just talk about really some of the things that have been going on over the last where are we now? It's the 12th of October today. So we're looking now at the past sort of 10 months really, or nearly 10 months of activity, what's been going on around the world and the impact that that's had on our industry as a technology provider, and obviously as a technology provider to yourselves and to the logistics industry. And more importantly, as with an industry with key worker status like yourselves in terms of the third-party logistics, haulage, storage and industry, what impact it's had on yourselves. So, I mean, broadly speaking, what has been happening for you over the last sort of 6, 7, 8 months within the business, and what changes have you seen?
So broadly speaking, we've seen quite a dramatic growth in demand for our services, but it's been a bit of a phased approach really. So at the start of lockdown, when the pandemic first struck, in those early days when information was quite sparse, then we, like many companies, furloughed some of our employees. We were concerned about the clients that we work with and their future, concerned around our own future, and just weren't really sure exactly what lockdown meant for everyone. But we quickly just established a core group of employees that, with that key worker status, were going on site, continuing to fulfill orders and working with the parcel carriers. And that carried on for a number of weeks. And then gradually we brought more and more people back into the business. And throughout the more recent months, we've seen quite a dramatic spike in terms of the number of orders that we're fulfilling and the number of inquiries that we're getting for our services. Very
good. I mean, and understandably, obviously in those early days, being nervous, I think obviously the entire tyre industry were. I mean, with regards to the actual client base that you were servicing, I mean, did you have some customers in some sectors that were very, very severely hit in those early days where almost the tap was turned off overnight?
We did, and we lost a few customers along the way. So we had some of our customers who are located abroad. They made a quick decision to just retrench back to their primary market and close down what they were doing abroad. And then we had some other customers who, given that their emphasis was so much on supplying retail and those outlets were closed, they pulled their goods out of the warehouse and just made their own arrangements to either kind of mothball that stock or do what they could with it. So we did see that, but on the flip side, a lot of our other brands were quite buoyant during that time. It probably took about 6 to 8 weeks for that trend to develop. But once they understood that was a real trend and the demand for their services had increased, then they started to bring a lot more goods into the country. Once those channels were opened, they did a lot of promotions to try and increase their sales, and that's kind of continued. So that's become the new norm for a lot of the companies.
Yeah, and I think that term, the new norm, I think that's something we're obviously hearing a lot. It's interesting to see what other people's new norms have become, and generally with the trend of e-commerce, obviously I suppose as an entire nation, as a world, we know there is a general trend towards growth in online shopping and e-commerce as people adapt and people change. I mean, how do you feel longer term that this situation is now going to impact what moves forward? I mean, do you think people will start to, hopefully if something changes within the next 6 to 12 months, can you see people rushing back to the high street? Do you think a lot of this spike and increase in demand that you've seen will suddenly drop off again, or is it here to stay? I mean, what's your assessment as a business? How are you planning for it?
It's hard. I think it's hard to predict what the general public will do. But just talking to the brands that we support, they're all making more and more arrangements to support online and pivot their businesses towards that. So we can only really work with the feedback that we get from those brands. Personally speaking, I don't go to the high street a great deal, and so maybe there is a seed change there. But we really just focus our efforts around what we're being told by the client base. So because they see that demand maintaining, then we've had to put a lot of measures in place to try and be able to support that, be it creating new fulfillment rooms, creating more and more packing desks, more and more pick faces, trying to become more efficient around our goods in process and batch picking and scanning, and just trying to eke out every efficiency we can so that we can use the same amount of space that we have to try and cope with what the brands are asking us to do.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, so you've touched on the technology a little bit there. I mean, how has the technology helped you to adapt in this, I suppose, new normal with the increased volumes that you're now seeing? I mean, what are you doing differently now that you weren't doing 12 months ago?
Well, when we set out founding the company, we really had two key themes that we promoted to every client that we pitched to. One was around enhanced customer service, because we felt that was an area that wasn't so prominent within the industry, and we could fill a gap. And then the other one was around technology. So we're now on, although we've only been running for 4 years, we're on our third warehouse management system.
Interesting.
Hopefully,
right.
our last
Hopefully
one.
your last, yeah.
We found the right one.
We hope so too, yeah.
But we definitely understood the importance of getting that right, and we haven't been afraid to kind of pivot to different systems as and when, which is a large project, and it's a great upheaval actually when you do come off of one onto another. But by getting that right, it means that we can create the economies of scale and the consistency, the error management, and the kind of enhanced customer service that we want to provide to the brands by having the right technology. If we didn't have that, I don't think we would have been able to cope with the increase in demand. I think we've tripled the amount of orders that we're outputting from the warehouse from pre-COVID to now, and that wouldn't happen without technology.
Very good. I mean, that is, yeah. I mean, so 3 systems, 3 times growth as a theme, a times 3 Haul Store theme. I like it. No, it's great. I mean, you're right. I mean, that's. I think when we embark on a relationship with a client, very few people would look to invest for less than a 5-year term, almost. No one sets out putting a system in many times. So I think I would say actually hats off to you. Has that agility? Do you still feel agile as a business 4 years on? Do you feel like you have been able to pivot and make those changes? And is that something that you can see carrying on, I suppose, a little bit? If things suddenly change again, how has your agility been through this process to make change, and how have the team adapted to that?
Yeah, we have. I think we have been. I think we're. I think you mentioned the word brave. That's a key word. We're not afraid to take on the difficult decisions. So when we first founded the company, a lot of what we did was pallet storage as an outsourced storage hub for a lot of other companies in the local area. But we soon realized that unless we could create more monetization for the goods that we were storing, we would soon go out of business, really, because no matter how much you fill up a warehouse located in Surrey, the rent, the rates, and the employment charges are just too high. So we had to find other ways to create revenue streams from that space. So that was the first dramatic change that we made. And then since then, we've not been afraid to make those decisions. So whether it's putting in mezzanines into the warehouse, whether it's changing platforms, whether it's approaching a different type of client base, which adds challenges, because storing people's pallets is very different to sending out thousands of orders a day for goods that can be an eclectic mix from furniture all the way down to jewelry. and everything in between, and every client has its own challenge. So that we're a young company, and luckily our ownership structure with 4 people at the helm of the company gives us the ability to just try and tackle all of these things and come at it with a bit of a fresh stance and an open mind, really.
Yeah, well, very good. Yeah, well done you 4. I mean, in terms of the team and the communication through this period of time, obviously going into lockdown and the recommendations of, if you can work from home. Obviously, we know within the industry, things aren't going to put themselves in boxes, and these boxes aren't going to find themselves to people's doors by people sat at home, unfortunately. So with lines of communications with your team and also with your customers, with it for a period of time, at least I suspect, not being face to face and having to do different things, how did you adapt to that? What sort of did you use? Platforms, video conferencing, what was done through that time?
Yeah, if we take the team first, so at the outset we had probably 50% of them at home, and 50% of them as the core team that were fulfilling orders. And so communication with the core team was fine because they were there, admittedly doing long days, and it was kind of a period of determination, I think, really, to try and get things done. That quickly burnt some of them out in a way. You can follow that, which we did, of course. But it's finding a way within a warehouse environment to make people feel comfortable, and that takes a little bit of time, to be fair. And we're still working at that. Warehouses are a tricky place, I think, really, because you get a lot of bottlenecks in terms of where people are. So although they're large structures, the front area where goods are coming in and going out, the picking rooms, some of the pick faces, they have a lot of footfall around them, and other parts of the building just don't really get seen throughout the course of a week. So just finding a way for people to feel comfortable is a bit of an ongoing process, really. We've created, one thing we have done is we've doubled the amount of picking desks that we had from pre-COVID to now, to try and give people the ability to try and stay in one place, have their own dedicated area, and just make their own working environment as safe as possible. But even that is an ongoing process, really. No, that makes perfect sense. And then on the client side, we were already using a lot of video technology anyway. Some of the brands that we work with are based abroad, so whether it's in the sales phase where we would do the pitch via Zoom or other mechanisms, that's carried on. And then a lot of the brands that, even if they're UK based, would interact with us via video message, whether it's giving us instructions around how they want a new particular SKU to be packaged. They might send us a video with an explanation, whether it's just a quick video call to talk about a project. So we were already using that quite a lot, so it hasn't really changed a great deal with the clients, to be fair. We can still host clients to come and visit us in a safe way, but generally speaking, we haven't seen too much of a change.
In terms of sort of, I suppose, unexpected benefits, I mean, we've touched on it a little bit already, to say that your volumes have increased significantly, or threefold, since sort of this time pre-COVID or this time last year. Moving forward and looking at the unexpected potential benefits, but also any lessons learned that will put you in good stead for the next few years. What are your thoughts when you look forward now? Is there anything that you're going to now probably change, maybe the way that you're going based on what's happened, and how does the future look for Haul Store?
I think so. In terms of the future for us, hopefully it's a period of continued growth, but more stable growth, I would say. Obviously, we've seen a spike, and we've been able to manage that, but that's not sustainable forever. So ideally, we'll have continued growth, but in a more stable fashion, and then I think we'll be fine in that regard. We have about 100 customers at the moment. 50 of them are brands that are quite active from an e-commerce fulfillment perspective. and we've got in our mind how many more that we think we can work with. So we're able to kind of plan and cope with that growth. The unexpected benefits, I would say, are probably that we've accelerated a lot of projects that as owners we had in our minds, but we never had necessarily the time to work with the team to start and plan those projects, or we didn't have the certainty around financial resources to want to kick them off. So we knew there were projects that we would need to do, but they were slated for years to come. We've accelerated a lot of those on the basis that we feel that the growth that we've seen is going to be sustainable. And so we've been able to kind of put some of those measures in place and plan for some of those now, albeit during quite a busy time. So we've stretched ourselves, but we've brought other people in where need be to do a week's work or a month's work to escalate us and drive us forward a bit. So I mentioned a couple of them around the technology and barcode scanning. So we want to move a lot more towards batch picking and multi-client batch picking and zone-based batch picking. But that, in order to do that, there's a two-pronged attack you have to do. You've got to barcode your entire warehouse, every single location, and we had about 4,000 of those to barcode. And then you need to plan for the actual technology side, getting the right scanners, programming them, getting them set up, training staff. So we've kind of pushed ourselves on a lot of these areas when that would have been maybe a project for next year or the year after.
See, yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, and I think that's another area we have seen a big uptick in, which is exactly what you've just said there. It's people perhaps suddenly investing in Android scanning technology, where probably, I mean, we think actually holistically we've probably seen a 5-year shift to sort of say we're probably 5 years ahead in terms of the trend of online shopping than we probably would have been had COVID not been in case. So it's probably going to get there eventually. And that's been our take.
What it does do is it puts a lot of pressure on our team. So we're lucky to have a brilliant team. We've got a staff of around 20 people, and they've been brilliant all the way through this period. And their outlook for our growth is that they're kind of bought into the brand and what we do and the company vision. But we put them under a lot of all the things I've discussed, us as owners kind of pushing things through, that puts strain on the staff, and they've coped really well with that. And we just have to balance that as well. So we've brought new people in, we've got some fresh faces, that gives everyone a lift. And then we definitely have a couple of the owners that are very hands-on in the warehouse on a day-to-day basis, kind of leading by example, and that helps rally the troops. But we are conscious of the people element of this, so that we just don't burn people out really, because as you say, those boxes have to get picked and packed and sent, and they don't march on their own out the door.
Absolutely right. And I think that is a really valid point you make around the people. And I think probably what we all felt, or certainly a lot of us would have felt in those very early days through COVID. I mean, I know certainly my mindset and sort of where I was, it was kind of everybody's really just got to do what they can do to get through effectively a national crisis. And I think certainly, probably and hopefully never again in our lifetimes will we have to experience or think about, that type of national crisis. But it's certainly, whether you think about wartime or whether you think about, whatever it is, and it's obviously not in comparison to something like that. But I think that mentality to me, and listening to some of the stories that we heard from our existing customer base and how people worked and how people came together and how people got on with things, was marvellous, absolutely marvellous in those first, those early months. But I think you're absolutely right, and you've hit the nail on the head with this idea of burnout. There's only so far and so much people can work at 110% before they need, you need to rein people in a bit, and it's just not sustainable. And I think that people question is still at the heart of every business, isn't it? It's that people make a business, and looking after those people, whether it's safety in terms of the COVID safety or whether it's actually mental safety, is very, very important, isn't it? So it's good to hear that. So just by way of wrapping up then, Neil, so if there's somebody watching this video from industry in a similar sort of business to yourselves, whether it be a co-owner like yourself or whether it be somebody on the shop floor or wherever that. What advice would you give them if you were to be able to give them some advice?
I think it's listening to your customers, the brands that you support. We are effectively their outsourced operations team, and so having that client at the forefront of everything that you do and every decision that you make is really important. Mm-hmm. And then just not underestimating how much work it is to be an e-commerce fulfillment house. You're constantly under barrage from all of these brands to do yep. to not only get all their orders out, but to live and breathe every situation they've got in their company as well, mm-hmm. And every project that they're undergoing, while also trying to manage your own business and drive that forward. And it takes a certain type of character, I think, to be able to cope with all those different demands. And so, don't underestimate that. And having the right management structure and team is really important for people to be able to take different responsibilities, because you can't do all of that on your own.
I think that is very, very, very sound advice. So Neil, very nice to speak to you this morning, and hopefully we'll see those continues to grow, and next time we talk there'll be another three times turn for Haul Store.
Yeah, Good luck. Thanks, Rob. Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.